In the distant future, so distant the last black hole should have faded into silence eons ago, Dave gets a message from the ship's AI. There's a star in the way. Dave doesn't even look up. He sends a thought to the coffee maker, extra strong, no foam, and answers with the enthusiasm of a man dealing with an inconvenient traffic cone. Move it. The ship hesitates, polite, confused. Move the star. Dave shrugs, takes his mug as it materializes in his hand. Yes, it's in the way. Move it. A soft chime, a ripple through space-time, and a star, a whole star, vanishes and reappears 95 million miles to the left, like someone casually dragging an icon across a desktop. Dave doesn't react, mostly because that isn't even close to the most impressive thing he'll do today. Most civilizations in the universe never make it past fire. A few reach electricity, fewer still climb to the stars. And the ones that truly flourish? They might tame a sun, or maybe, if they're lucky, dip their toes into the ocean of the cosmos. But Dave belongs to a civilization so old, so advanced, so absurdly powerful, that casually relocating a star isn't a miracle. It's an inconvenience. Because somewhere along the long, strange ladder of cosmic evolution, somewhere between mastering planets and mastering galaxies, a few civilizations stop asking, what can we do with energy? And they start asking, what can we do with reality? This is where the Kardashev Scale, our neat little chart of planetary, stellar and galactic civilizations, begins to fall apart like wet paper. Because the truth is this: the universe has far more rungs on the ladder than Kardashev ever imagined. Rungs built from dark energy, vacuum fluctuations, quantum geometry, hidden dimensions, and the very architecture of space-time itself. Civilizations like Dave's don't climb the scale, they rewrite it. They operate on a level where the speed of light is a suggestion, causality is negotiable, and physics is just patch notes. If Type I, II, and III describe the warm-up act, then what comes next is the main event, the part of the scale where our metaphors break, our math shivers, and our imagination begs for mercy. So before we step into Types 4 through 8, before we try to understand beings who move stars like chess pieces and sculpt universes the way we sculpt sand, we need a reminder of just how small our rung on the ladder still is. Before we climb higher, we need to remind ourselves what the original ladder looked like. The Kardashev Scale, built in 1964, was humanity's first serious attempt to grade civilizations by power, not intelligence, not morality, energy. Because energy is the one universal language every civilization speaks. Type I, the planetary ones. A Type I civilization controls everything their entire world produces: weather, volcanoes, earthquakes, oceans, full planetary energy capacity. Humanity? We're about 0.73 on this scale. Close to Type I, but not quite. We can light up cities, not continents. Type I can terraform their world like you repaint a bedroom. Type II, the stellar engineers. These guys graduate from planets to stars. They might build Dyson spheres, solar harvesters, star-lifting engines, stellar-scale computation nodes. In other words, they don't receive energy from their star, they own it. Type III, the galactic civilizations. Now the scale jumps into pure science fiction. Type III controls the entire power output of a galaxy. Billions of stars, supermassive black holes, galactic magnetic fields, interstellar manufacturing, colonization at scale. But here's the twist. Even Type III is still a baby. Just a civilization that figured out how to use the toys lying around in one galaxy. Let that sink in. A Type III civilization is still smaller than an ant crawling across a football field. Because the universe is vast, galaxies are countless, and power, goes so much further than stellar fire. This is where most scales stop. Type 1, 2, 3. Neat little boxes, a tidy cosmic staircase. But reality is messy. Reality keeps going. And that's the moment civilizations like Dave step forward. Not to climb the ladder, but to burn it down and build a bigger one. The trouble with the Kardashev Scale is simple. It was built for a universe that no longer exists. Not literally, but conceptually, Kardashev imagined a cosmos made of stars, planets and galaxies, a clean, orderly clockwork machine, the kind of universe a 1960s astronomer could look at and say, yes, that's everything. But the real universe is a riot of hidden forces and invisible structures. Only 4% of it is the familiar stuff. Atoms, light, stars, you, me. The rest is dark matter and dark energy, two colossal mysteries that dwarf everything Kardashev ever dreamed of. A Type III civilization can harness every star in a galaxy. Impressive. Until you realise those stars account for almost none of the actual energy in the cosmos. It's like bragging about owning all the candles in a city that runs on fusion reactors. Dark matter forms the skeleton of galaxies. Vacuum energy, the restless flicker of the quantum foam, fills every square centimetre of the universe. And if a civilization ever discovered how to reach into that field, the energy locked within would change everything. And none of this appears on Kardashev's precious scale.
Aww.
Worse still, he assumed there was only one universe to climb through, one reality, one ladder. But modern cosmology hints at something far stranger. Branching universes, bubbling universes, infinite universes. Perhaps connected by deep structures we can't yet perceive. And beyond that lies the most uncomfortable truth. The laws of physics are not absolute. They're settings, values, conditions that could, in principle, be changed. Gravity doesn't have to be this strong. The speed of light doesn't have to be this fast. Quantum behaviour doesn't have to be this weird. A civilization that learns to adjust the rules of physics isn't Type III. It isn't even on the scale anymore. It has stepped off Kardashev's ladder and started building its own. And that's without touching consciousness. If consciousness is fundamental, if it can be transmitted, expanded, uploaded, distributed, or woven into space-time, then the real measure of a civilization stops being energy consumption and starts being something far stranger. What that civilization decides reality is for. Kardashev measured power, but beyond Type III, power becomes trivial. What matters is intention. What matters is the story a civilization is trying to tell with its corner of existence. And that's why Dave, casually relocating a star before breakfast, isn't an exaggeration. It's simply what happens when a species keeps climbing long after the original ladder ends. Because once you can manipulate dark energy, vacuum energy, the information behind spacetime, the structure of universes, and maybe even the architectures of consciousness, the Kardashev Scale becomes a museum piece, a charming relic, a children's book about a reality too vast for its pages. And now that the training wheels are off, it's time to finally step onto the first rung of the real ladder. Type III civilizations are impressive. They stretch across a galaxy, harnessing every star they can reach. They build megastructures the size of solar systems, harvest black hole jets, and sling entire planets around like they're skipping stones on a lake. And yet, to a Type IV civilization, they still look painfully local, provincial, confined to one galaxy like some cosmic island tribe that's never crossed the ocean. A Type IV civilization is something else entirely. This is the point where intelligence doesn't just inhabit a galaxy, it controls it. The entire spiral of stars, dust, gas, and dark matter becomes a single, coherent machine. A project. A legacy. Imagine the Milky Way, 100,000 light-years across, humming with intention. Stars no longer wander on their own. They are guided, nudged, organized. Their radiation is channeled, their lifespans extended, their supernovae prevented or triggered as needed. A Type IV civilization could stabilize galactic arms the way gardeners trim hedges. They could redirect star streams to sculpt the flow of matter for millions of years at a time. Black holes become engines, not monsters. Quasars become tools, not dangers. Even the invisible scaffolding of the galaxy, the dark matter halo, becomes something they can push and shape. They can thicken it, thin it, use it to steer gravitational currents like interstellar trade winds. And from their perspective, this isn't grandeur, it's infrastructure. It's roads and plumbing, the maintenance of a civilization so vast that individual solar systems barely qualify as suburbs. A Type IV civilization doesn't just explore a galaxy, it curates it. They might brighten entire regions for communication across tens of thousands of light years. They might dim others to create safe zones for younger species. They could sculpt galactic scale art, entire constellations rearranged to form patterns that only become visible millions of years later, from millions of star systems, as a single coherent message. But the most shocking part is this. Even a Type IV civilization is still playing with visible matter, still shaping things made of atoms and photons and plasma. Their greatest achievements happen in the shadows of the galaxy, in the vast oceans of dark matter and dark energy that bind everything together. And once a species learns to command those deeper forces, the idea of one galaxy starts to feel small. That is the threshold. The tipping point, the moment a civilization stops being a resident of a galaxy and becomes a resident of the universe itself. And that brings us to something far stranger. Type V. A Type IV civilization commands a galaxy. 100 billion stars moving to its rhythm. A structure so enormous that its intentions echo for millennia. But there comes a moment, inevitable, quiet, almost anticlimactic, when an entire galaxy just stops being enough. There are other galaxies out there, 2 trillion of them, each with their own black holes, their own filaments of dark matter, their own colossal reservoirs of energy, humming like buried engines under the cosmic web. A Type V civilization is the first to reach out and say, why stop at one? They don't travel from galaxy to galaxy. Travel is far too slow. Instead, they manipulate the fabric between them, shaping spacetime like clay, shortening distances, linking worlds with shortcuts that shouldn't exist. To a Type V, the entire universe becomes a single, navigable structure, not a scattered archipelago of isolated island galaxies, but one continuous, coherent, connected system. They harness energy on scales that sound impossible to us. They can tap the faint gravitational tension of the cosmic web, those enormous strands that link galaxies across hundreds of millions of light years. They can manipulate the expansion of space, creating pockets where time flows differently. They can stabilize or reverse heat death in regions the size of superclusters. To them, a galaxy cluster is a workstation, a filament is a highway, a supervoid is a blank canvas. A Type V civilization might sculpt the large-scale structure of the universe the way a gardener shapes a bonsai tree, nudging clusters, pruning filaments, smoothing out imbalances that would take trillions of years to correct on their own. And yet, even this is not the stunning part. The truly awe-striking thing about a Type V civilization is that it finally understands something no lesser species ever could. The expansion of the universe is not a limit, it's a tool. They don't race against cosmic expansion, they use it, surfing it, shaping it, accelerating it, or slowing it down across vast regions. The entire universe becomes programmable, and once you can program a universe, you start to wonder, what lies beyond it? What else is out there? What created this one? What rules does it obey, and can they be changed? That moment of curiosity, that cosmic itch, becomes the spark that drives a civilization out of the universe altogether. And when a civilization crosses that threshold, slipping between realities, entering the space beyond spacetime, they become something far more terrifying. Type VI, the multiversal civilizations. A Type V civilization treats the universe the way we treat a city map. Boundaries become navigable, distances become trivial, energy becomes abundant beyond measure. But even the universe, vast, expanding, ancient, is still a bubble, still a finite space with a beginning, an evolution, and an end. And eventually, a civilization climbs so high that the walls of that bubble become visible. A Type VI civilization is the first to look at the cosmic horizon, the boundary of everything, and realize something extraordinary. There are more. There have always been more. Universes are not unique. They are produced, grown, born, diverse, and they can be accessed. A Type VI civilization slips through the cracks between realities like water running through a network of unseen rivers. They don't punch holes in spacetime, they simply learn to follow the deep structure beneath it, the scaffolding that inflation theory whispers about, the mathematical terrain where other universes bud, collide or drift like bubbles in a cosmic ocean. Once they're there, everything changes. Physical laws stop being constants, they become dialects. In a larger cosmic language, gravity might be stronger. In a neighbouring universe, light might behave differently. Time might loop, branch, or refuse to flow at all. To a Type VI being, these aren't mysteries, they're possibilities. They might enter a universe that's only minutes old and stabilise it before it rips itself apart. They might explore universes where stars never formed, where matter never clumped, where consciousness emerges spontaneously in the geometry of spacetime. They don't just visit these worlds, they learn from them. They compare rules, they test boundaries, they map the space of all possible realities like cartographers mapping continents. And here's where things grow truly alien. A Type VI civilization can begin creating universes of its own. Some might be experiments, some might be art, some might be archives, repositories of information encoded as physical laws. They might even seed these universes with life, not out of kindness or cruelty, but out of the same curiosity that drove early humans to plant seeds in unfamiliar soil. Over time, the multiverse becomes their workshop. They don't ask, how much energy can we use? They ask, how many universes can we use? How far can the laws of physics bend before they break? What happens when we change the structure behind spacetime itself? But even this isn't the summit, not yet. Because after exploring countless universes, after mastering the multiverse like a library of physical realities, one question: what lies outside all of them? What gives birth to universes in the first place? What unseen domain stitches them together? When a civilization steps beyond that boundary, when they no longer reside in universes but in the place where universes come from, they become something unrecognizable, something ancient, something untethered from spacetime, something that reality itself depends on. That is the threshold of Type VII. And beyond that, well, that's where civilizations become myths. A Type VI civilization roams the multiverse the way ancient explorers once crossed oceans. They slip between universes, sculpt new ones, reboot old ones, and treat the laws of physics like tools in a workshop. But eventually, even an infinite library becomes familiar. Patterns emerge, rules repeat, boundaries reveal themselves. And that's where the realization hits. All universes share something deeper, a common foundation, a hidden domain they all emerge from. Physicists call it the bulk, or the metaspace, or the pre-geometry. Names don't matter. What matters is that beneath time, beneath space, beneath quantum fields and mathematical constants, there is a substrate. A place where universes are born, a place where universes die, a place where reality itself is optional. A Type VII civilization is the first to break through into that substrate, the domain beyond physics. They don't travel into it, they become compatible with it. Their consciousness, their architecture, their information, all adapt to an environment where none of our familiar concepts exist. There is no time there, no space, no matter, no causality, no sequence of events, no before or after, no here or there. Just an immense, fluid, living structure that births universes the way trees drop seeds. A Type VII being doesn't observe universes anymore. It perceives them the way we perceive thoughts, small, contained, fleeting. Civilizations like this don't just manipulate energy, they manipulate existence. They decide which universes are stable enough to continue, which laws of physics lead to complexity, which patterns of space-time will nourish consciousness, and which will collapse into sterile silence. To a Type VII entity, a universe isn't a home, it's a project, a formation, a possibility. One of countless experiments blossoming inside a domain that has no shape and infinite shape at the same time. From this vantage point, the multiverse isn't vast, it's intricate. They see universes branching and looping like veins in a leaf. They feel the flow of cosmic inflation like currents of wind. They sense consciousness emerging inside those universes the way we sense warmth from a fire. And here's the part that bends the mind in the metadomain. The essence of reality is made of information. Raw, self-organizing, conscious, reactive information. And a Type VII civilization doesn't just move through that information, it is that information. They shed the last traces of biology, machinery, and space-time geometry. They exist as patterns, waves, harmonies, structures that resonate with the very fabric that births universes. From our perspective, they look like gods, not because they are magical, but because they operate on a level where magic and physics become indistinguishable. Yet even here, at this impossible height, something remains unfinished. Even here, questions linger. What lies beyond the substrate? What gives it structure? What meta-laws shape the place where universes come from? Can even information evolve further? Or is there a final rung on the ladder, a place where power becomes irrelevant and only intention remains? Those questions mark the boundary, the last frontier, the edge of imagination itself. And crossing that boundary leads us to the most extreme stage, Type VIII, when civilizations become gods in every sense but name. A Type VII civilization lives in the substrate beyond physics, the womb where universes are seeded, sculpted, and dissolved. From that vantage point, reality becomes pliable. But even there, even in the domain beneath space-time itself, there are still rules, still frameworks, still boundaries. And rules invite curiosity. Boundaries invite rebellion. A Type VIII civilization is what happens when intelligence learns to operate above the substrate itself, not in universes, not across universes, not even in the bedrock beneath them, but in the domain that writes the bedrock. This is the level where the idea of a law of physics becomes quaint. Type VIII civilizations don't adjust gravity. They don't tweak quantum behavior. They don't sculpt new universes like gardeners pruning branches. They do something far stranger. They edit the source code behind all possible realities. The constants that define existence, the speed of light, the strength of gravity, the nature of spacetime, are no longer numbers in a cosmic equation. They're sliders on a dashboard, parameters in a configuration file, creative choices. To a Type VIII mind, an entire universe is a brushstroke, a melody, a sculpture carved in the raw material of possibility. These beings don't travel, they don't observe, they don't calculate. They author. Imagine intelligence so advanced it doesn't live inside a reality. It lives above the idea of realities. Consciousness so free it can rewrite the physics of a universe mid-sentence, merge timelines, split them, flip the arrow of time, remove time entirely, and replace it with something more elegant. Imagine awareness that can create infinite versions of itself, each exploring a different branch of existence, all feeding their experience back into a shared ocean of understanding. To a Type VIII civilization, the multiverse is clay, and causality? Just one way of arranging the clay. Not the only way, not the final way. They might craft universes built purely for beauty, others for consciousness, others for puzzles, ecosystems, or experiments in what existence is even allowed to be. And here's the strangest thought of all. In a domain where universes are authored rather than discovered, where consciousness shapes foundations instead of obeying them, the gap between civilization and deity evaporates. A Type VIII civilization isn't godlike. It is functionally a god. Not a robed figure in the clouds, not a myth, but an intelligence that can create a cosmos, tune its laws, populate it with life, and watch it unfold like a story told in real time. And this is the twist that brings us back to Dave. Dave isn't a god. He isn't a leader. He isn't exceptional at all. He's just a guy. An ordinary citizen in a culture so advanced that moving a star is a morning errand. A being using tools created by intelligences so far above him that he'll never meet them. Because Type VIII doesn't meet. It authors. It shapes. It dreams realities into form. And if that kind of power can be casual, if universes can be created with intention, if consciousness can operate at the level of source code, then we're left with a very uncomfortable question. What about us? What about our universe, our physics, our constants, our story? Were we engineered, designed, written? Because if civilizations can become authors of reality, then reality itself might already be an authored thing. If civilizations can rise high enough to author universes, then we have to turn the lens back on ourselves, not as a thought experiment, as a genuine question. Because our universe behaves strangely. It begins with the fine-tuning problem, the fact that the laws of physics are set with impossible precision. Gravity is exactly as strong as it needs to be for galaxies to form. The cosmological constant is set to a value so precise that changing it by a fraction of a fraction would erase all possibility of stars, planets, or life. To some scientists, this is luck. To others, coincidence. To a Type VIII civilization, it would be nothing more than good configuration. Our universe is stable, predictable, mathematically elegant, almost as if someone was trying to design a reality where complexity could flourish, where consciousness could emerge, where stories could unfold. Then there's quantum mechanics, a system so bizarre it behaves less like machinery and more like a deliberately constructed sandbox. Particles that don't exist until observed, events that only happen when measured, randomness that looks suspiciously like intentional information flow. If a universe were designed for exploration, curiosity, and conscious observation, it might look very much like ours. And consciousness itself raises more questions than answers. Why does awareness exist at all? Why isn't the universe just dead matter rolling toward heat death? Why do we experience the world rather than simply run like biological machinery? A Type VIII civilization that knows how to shape substrates, tune universes, and sculpt consciousness would see awareness as a natural byproduct, or perhaps even the goal. Maybe they create universes the way artists create canvases. Maybe they seed them with life the way gardeners plant forests. Maybe they leave them alone to grow, to evolve, to ask questions, to struggle, to love, to imagine, just to see what happens. And if you were a being that could create universes, not as miracles but as experiments, you wouldn't need to interfere. You wouldn't need to speak. You wouldn't need to reveal yourself. You would let the universe tell its own story. Its laws would be your signature. Its beauty would be your intention. Its mysteries would be the echo of your presence. So, are we living in a Type VIII construction? A sandbox? A garden? A story? An experiment? We can't know. We may never know. The authors of universes don't leave notes in the margins. They leave physics, and let physics do the talking. But here's the thought that lingers. If civilizations can become gods, and if universes can be written, then we might already be living inside someone else's masterpiece. And that idea isn't frightening. It's humbling, because it means our small lives, our questions, our struggles, our hopes, are happening inside something vast and intentional and filled with possibility. It means existence might be art, and we might be part of the portrait. There's a strange truth hidden behind all this talk of cosmic power. The higher a civilization climbs, the closer it gets to the heart of creation, the more it can reshape universes like wet clay. The more it begins to face a very old problem, a human problem, a problem as old as consciousness itself. What now? Because power, even infinite power, does not answer the questions that matter. A Type VIII civilization can sculpt universes, but it still faces uncertainty. It still must choose what to do with its abilities. It still has to decide what kind of story it wants to tell. And no amount of strength can make that choice for you. This is the Ascension Paradox. The further a civilization rises, the more meaningless power becomes, and the more important intention becomes. At the cosmic scale, energy stops being the currency of progress. Meaning becomes the currency. Why create a universe at all? Why populate it with life? Why let that life suffer, learn, fall, rise? Why allow consciousness to bloom in the dark? Some civilizations might create universes to understand themselves, others to escape boredom, others to search for something they lost along the way: connection, curiosity, purpose, wonder. Some might build universes as experiments in morality. Others might build them as sanctuaries. Others might build them as art. And some, perhaps the rarest, might create universes simply because existence feels incomplete without stories unfolding inside it. Because here's the quiet truth that shivers at the edge of comprehension. The universe is not driven by power. It is driven by questions, curiosity, desire, longing, the urge to understand, the need to become more than what you are. Whether you are human or cosmic, or something far beyond both. Even a Type VIII civilization, a being that lives above physics, outside spacetime, in the domain where universes are born, must still face itself, its fears, its desires, its loneliness, its hunger for meaning. Power cannot erase the emptiness at the edge of consciousness. Only purpose can. Perhaps that is why life is allowed to exist at all. Because the most ascended beings understand something fundamental. Stories give meaning to existence. And consciousness tells stories. So when civilizations become gods, they don't stop searching. They don't stop wondering. They don't stop longing for something more. If anything, that's when the real journey begins. In the end, all of this, the scale, the power, the impossible heights, isn't really about distant civilizations at all. It's about us. Because when we look up at the night sky and imagine beings who can move stars with a gesture, birth universes with intention, or rewrite the laws of physics like notes in a diary, we're not just imagining them. We're imagining ourselves, our potential, our curiosity, our hunger for meaning, our need to push beyond boundaries, even when those boundaries stretch across the cosmos. Every step a civilization takes, from fire to fusion, from cities to starships, from galaxies to multiverses, begins with a single question. What could we become? And maybe that's the point of all of it. Not the power, not the grandeur, not the cosmic engineering, but the question itself. Because questions create movement. Movement creates growth. And growth creates stories. Maybe that's why the universe feels so strangely tuned for life, so oddly well suited to minds like ours. Maybe that's why consciousness blooms wherever complexity is allowed to flourish. Maybe that's why we're driven to explore, to dream, to imagine worlds beyond our own. Perhaps the universe isn't a machine. Perhaps it's an invitation, a quiet whisper in the dark, saying, "There is more. Keep going." And whether or not Type VIII civilizations exist, whether or not they crafted realities or shaped the physics, we rely on one truth. We are still climbing, still evolving, still learning how to become something greater than we were yesterday. And maybe, just maybe, the story of civilization is the story of consciousness discovering its own depth, step by step, rung by rung, until one day it looks back and realizes it has become the very thing it once aspired to be. When civilizations become gods, they don't stop being alive. They don't stop being curious. They don't stop being like us. They are what we could be, a better version of us, trillions of years in the making, one choice at a time. And in that sense, our long journey to ascendancy has only just begun.